And hello, everyone. Welcome to the Warburg Infusion Entertainment Review. My name is Thomas, aka MrWartburg. Alongside me, as always, is my co-host Patrick, aka Mr. Fusion.
Greetings and salutations, everybody. It's been a while.
Yeah, this week we're recording episode number 47, barreling along towards episode 50 and our 2-year anniversary show coming up. This week we're going to be talking all about the goodness from Comic-Con and the associated trailers and news that came out around that window. Our thoughts on Nope, some other trailers for things that even like Amazon's coming out with in August that actually like kind of piqued my interest and apparently getting good reviews. Not the one I think you're thinking of, Fusion, the
Mm,
Cave Diver one. Apparently it's
okay.
actually pretty good. Everyone's like going, damn, Ron Howard's fucking nailing it. That's a Ron Howard joint. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check that out. And we're gonna dive into briefly our thoughts on Miss Marvel, plus a little teaser for a solo show I'm doing. Maybe I got to work on a script before I actually do it. So we'll see what happens there. So Fusion, as always, let's start with what we're watching and playing. What have you been up to in the last like 2.5, 3 weeks?
Inching my way through Umbrella Academy. I didn't not really big on binging the show. It's one of those where I can watch an episode or two at a time, before I get a little burnt out. So, inching my way through that. Very interesting show, of course. Not like one of the best superhero shows out there, but still interesting. Kind of has its funny moments, but I think the pacing of it is a little odd. But that's just the style that they're going with. They've been with for 3 seasons with the show. So watching a little bit of that. Today I actually sat back and watched Chef, the Jon Favreau movie. Personal favorite of mine, as you know, I'm a big cook, and every now and then I just pop that on because I just love the show. I got some really good recipe ideas from the show itself. It's got it plays some respect out to Austin, Texas, barbecue as well. Just it's a good movie to watch from time to time. I really like it. It's a favorite of mine. And then in terms of like what I've been playing, Apex. Just been playing a lot of Apex, man. We've been winning a lot of matches lately, which I've been very happy about. Kind of, the first 2 years I played it, really never took it serious, didn't really dig into it. Spend some time really learning the game, and I got better at it. And I'm not like saying I'm some awesome esports guy, but hey, at least we're winning matches. That's the main thing. You want to play, you want to win matches. And when I squad up randoms, we win some matches here and there. I win like a match a day, and I want to keep that average going. A match a day. I'm going to win one every day. Just keep going with that. But
That's a nice
yeah,
target to try to hit.
yeah, yeah. My
Uh,
KDA isn't as respectable as yours. You're rocking the 1.0. I'm like trying to inch. I'm inching closer to zero point 0.5. Because my first 2 years, I didn't have. I probably had like 10 kills total because I was playing with you guys, and I just really was just like not even really like I had to figure out the game, and I never really worked through it. So one day, a month or so ago, I sat down in the tutorial and I learned how I play the game. That's the main thing, how I play the game, and then I got better at it, honestly. So yeah,
Fair enough. That's what you got to do.
play, play that, man, and then just hanging out, getting ready for all the stuff. Watch Nope. Miss Marvel wrapped up a couple weeks ago. Getting ready for She-Hulk. We could talk about Comic Con. A lot of good stuff a lot. I think Marvel really will rock the shit this year at Comic Con with all the trailers and everything, and we could talk about that here in a little bit. So very excited about what's in the pipeline, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm surprised you didn't mention Harley Quinn.
Yeah, I haven't mentioned it yet just because I haven't watched it yet,
You should,
unfortunately.
because
I need
I
to.
quite enjoyed the first 3 episodes.
Okay, I need to watch it, but I will say you jumped in on that. I've been neck deep into Better Call Saul, the final
I
half of the
haven't
final
watched that at
season.
all.
And man, oh my lord. Like this just there's just so much because we've talked about our favorite TV shows of all time. Mine is still number one is still Breaking Bad, but man, was Better Call Saul was a great prequel show. A good like successor show to Breaking Bad. I never thought Better Call Saul would be this good. I had confidence in Bob Odenkirk because I'm a big fan of his, he and David Cross, but man, this show it blew my expectations, and the final season has been so damn good. And the second half kicked off a few weeks ago, and man, it has you leaving with 3 episodes left. What the hell are they going to do to wrap this show up, man? Really, like there's some serious stuff that has to happen the next couple weeks. So I'm really excited about that. But yeah, hopefully this weekend I can jump into Harley Quinn and catch the first few episodes.
All right, so for me, like I said, Harley Quinn. We both watch Nope. I've also been diving like neck deep, or I should say head first back into Fallout 4 for the first time in a long time.
Mhm.
Downloaded a bunch of mods, been streaming that. It's been just like a fun chill, get home, put in an hour or two, and work on a settlement or go clear a building, and then you just go back and do more settlement shit. Don't even play the story. It's got a fun gameplay mechanic loop that's very different from anything else in the Fallout universe, even 76, because you've got those single player components that 76 lacks. So like it's got the best of both worlds, which is why I really like Fallout 4. And I hope wherever they go next in the Fallout universe, they bring a lot of the interesting mechanics that 4 brought to the table. Been quite excited about that. And of course, since the last episode, we've watched the end of Ms. Marvel. So we'll be talking about that. I quite enjoyed that show. I think it was one of the few that I was like, man, this should have been longer. Like for sure longer. We've said that every once in a while, like, oh, I could have used one more episode. I'm thinking like, damn, you could have got 3 or 4 out of this.
Yeah.
For sure. Like this could have been a 10-episode show. Because that kind of story almost kind of like demands it. Coming of age story.
Mm-hmm.
And they did nothing with the adult characters, which is like, that's multiple episodes just on the table right there. Right? Like the older brother, right? The parents. The mom got a little bit, but the dad got nothing. But the dad was awesome.
Yeah, the dad was
like,
awesome. Yeah, and the brother just disappeared.
The dad's like relationship with the church, like that is an angle they could have played up, right? Like their Sheik character, he's a fun, like an interesting, like religious leader character, and it's played very earnestly, but they don't really do much with it. I felt like they left some on the table, but it feels like a show that is primed for a second season, unlike most of their other properties. Like the rest we've said, other than Loki, none of them are getting a season 2 definitively.
Definitively not yet.
No. Yeah, everything that has aired to date, except for Marvel, they've said no season 2s except Loki. So I'm like, Ms. Marvel feels like they will get a second.
Yeah.
It's popular, and like they're all like younger actors, generally speaking. So like no one's demanding millions of dollars to come back, right? Like it's on the talent. Like it just seemed cheaper to make than some of the other stuff.
Well, it's obviously going to take 2 years because next year is the Marvel.
Exactly. It'll be a jump, like probably senior year high school, maybe first year college.
Would they do it if the Marvels bombs?
What's their definition of bomb though? Like the first Ant-Man, technically.
That was $600 million. That's not.
And that
a
was
bomb,
so far worse than the rest of their stuff in that phase, though. Like, is that their definition of a bomb?
Like,
even Captain.
I like the.
No, don't. I'm talking financially, not like
financially,
quality.
Okay.
Like Captain Marvel to me was a quality miss, but it made over $1 billion. So
true.
What's their definition of a bomb? They going by quality? They going by financials? They going by both? I don't know. Yeah, that's a weird one. But either way, I enjoyed Ms. Marvel season 1 quite a bit. Yeah. I love the lead actress. She's awesome, and is a super fan of comic book shit. Yeah. Like people that are in these shows, like go compare her interviews to like fucking Christian Bale as Gore. He is so far just removed from comic books. He has no concept of them. Versus like someone who's like, oh, I'm blanking on her name, and I hate that. The lead actress in Ms. Marvel out here being like, no, it's not Earth, 616. It's 199999, and I will prove it in interviews.
Iman Vellani.
Yeah, and it was an I and a V, but she's fantastic, and we need more people like her in the industry because she's dope.
I agree. I thought she was adorable in the show. I thought she was perfectly cast for the character. I think I'm going to agree with you on this. I really felt like we've said this a few times, but maybe a few more episodes. I think WandaVision, we probably argued about it, but I think we both said, it was okay for the. I think Falcon and Winter Soldier, we both said maybe a little bit more, but when we come to learn after the fact that there was a whole secondary storyline completely gutted away, okay, maybe the pacing would have been fine with that virus storyline, right? And the number of episodes would have been fine. Hawkeye for me was probably one that needed a few more episodes, just because we wanted a little more. I wanted a little more on.
Wasn't that the longest though?
That
one was like 9 episodes, wasn't it?
I thought it was. I think it was 8 episodes.
Yeah, it was the longest.
Okay. Yeah, that record is going to be shattered in 2 years, right? We'll talk about that in a minute.
That's just crazy to me.
Right. So
makes me wonder if they're going to do a big Defenders arc. Like the length makes me wonder. We're not getting just Daredevil, right?
No, we're at least getting Jessica Jones
and Ritter, and honestly, I think Luke Cage, because their pairing was so good in Jessica Jones season 1. That's what got Luke Cage to happen, was that season. If you can recapture that with Coulter and Ritter, I think you'd have to bring Cage in.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get into that in a little bit.
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Miss Marvel, great first season. I do think that this one, yeah, it should have been a few more episodes, just because we did need more of her brother and her dad. Because I thought they were excellent casting, great acting, so much personality. And I know a lot of people didn't like the show because of whatever reasons. And maybe one day I'll go on a rant about this whole idea of edgelording like Disney content and MCU content. But I don't want to do that now. I want to talk. I want to celebrate like just the fact that this was a very highly rated show. It was one of the top rated shows on overall, like of all of the Disney Plus series to date. It is actually the top show at this point, which has like a 98, 99 on Rotten Tomatoes. Awesome. I do agree with you. It should have been a little longer, just because I wanted a little more character development from the dad and the brother, maybe even her best friend,
Yeah, I was
because
gonna say
I
her
think
too.
because obviously she's a pivotal part of Kamala's life, but she really jumped in and out of the episodes very sporadically, and maybe there was some reshoots that did that. It just felt like at the beginning of the show we were going to get more of her, and then it just kind of disappeared. Right?
Hmm.
She just disappeared for stretches, and Bruno, it's Bruno, right? Is
Yeah,
the kid's, yeah. Bruno is obviously a pivotal character going forward with her, but let's talk about the big things wrapping this up, man. With Miss Marvel, not only was it good first season, I thought it was. I love the cinematography, love the pacing, love the music, the style of the show. Perfect for a teenage superhero, you know. And they do the culture justice in that it's not overly. It could, like, where it could be translated as somewhat insulting because they're trying too hard, you know. They engross themselves into the culture, in the Pakistani culture, and they tell you about partition and all that, and it's like, okay, it's a really good backstory that you learn from it. I do think there's a little bit that could have been more talked about the other dimension, um, and I forget what the demons and witches are called, jinns.
the Jins.
The origin story of the jinn could have gone a little deeper, but and you're right, maybe two or three more episodes would have been perfect for that. And we can have a whole episode where we don't even have to have Kamala. We can have everyone around her, doing their part to push the story forward, and it would have been fine. The other big thing. Let's wrap. On the back end of it, big reveals. Obviously, her Bangalore bracelet it's attached to whatever powers that Captain Marvel has, right?
Yeah, apparently.
But then apparently, because they completely swap out in the end credits, they swap locations instantly. The other big thing for me is we have the introduction of mutants finally in the MCU, like
Which is crazy
officially.
given the timeline of which how she got introduced as a character in the comics.
Yeah,
Which is like, would she have been a mutant if not for the Fox movies?
yeah, I think so. I think so. She would have been, because she came out, what, 10 years ago,
Yeah, it
12
was
years ago,
like,
2010.
yeah, roughly.
2010, and that's when Marvel was really pushing Inhumans, because they didn't own the film rights to the mutants, and they didn't know how they were if they were going to ever get access to mutants on film. So they were starting to push Inhumans really big in the 2010s. And when she debuted, she's obviously in the comics an Inhuman. But yeah, so you have to ask questions now. Is is Monica Rambeau a mutant? Is
Is
Carol Danvers a mutant?
is Quake a mutant?
Is Quake a mutant?
That'd be
Yeah,
dope.
yeah. Like, is she not an Inhuman like we thought? Is she a mutant? But then in the comics, the Terrigen Mist kills mutants, so that does.
They're not
You're
gonna. They're
gonna have.
not gonna. They're not gonna get that deep in the weeds in the MCU. That would
I know they're
be.
not.
That would be so fucking stupid. No way. Like, and people would hate it too. Like, it was a bad storyline.
Yeah,
Like, people didn't like it in the comics.
no.
They wouldn't
Yeah.
translate that to the
No,
MCU.
Inhumans versus X-Men was a really, really bad story. I mean, first off, they killed Cyclops through this whole thing. They actually killed off several big characters like
Yeah.
Jamie Madrox and a couple other mutants that were very popular, and to just push this. And remember, you and I were talking
Yeah, we were
about this
like,
on.
oh, they don't think they're gonna get Fox to sell, so fuck
Yeah,
it. They're not gonna
yeah, we
make their
were.
competition source material anymore.
This is when we used to have conversations on the Rooster Teeth forums, and people would just like read us just arguing back and forth. But we were both like, "This is obviously what they're doing, because they don't think Disney doesn't think they're getting mutants on film, so they're just like, let's push Inhumans." And I'm like, we're gonna do away with the fact that basically in the comics in the late 80s and through the 90s, Marvel was carried by the X-Men and the Mutants. They like the comic book line was basically carried through today. But I mean, they were struggling in the 80s. They were struggling, and the X-Men had disappeared in the very early 80s because they canceled a couple of the comics because they just weren't doing well. And then in the late 80s, they brought them back, and there was a big explosion with Chris Claremont, Jim Lee, those guys on board. John Byrne. They really pushed out a whole new story, and with the all new, all different X-Men, and then all of a sudden they saw a boom. But the other comics, the Avengers, Captain America, all those other big names weren't doing very well in terms of sales. The X Men are what carried them into the 90s, and then with the huge success of the X Men in the mid 90s, then they saw a resurgence of all the other comics because of the crossovers that they would do with the rest of the universe, the Marvel universe, with the X Men, and so that kind of rubbed the momentum onto those comics, and then they were able to just push forward with everything else. So I find it kind of funny that in the 2010s they're like, yeah, just because the films aren't really, we're not going to be able to do mutants, let's kind of kick them back a little bit and push. I don't know if you remember, I was pretty pissed about it at the time.
Oh yeah, because I mean, look behind you. Like you're a big X-Men fan,
Yeah, obviously.
right?
Yeah.
Like, but then as soon as they got the rights back, oh hey, here's an entire revamp, House of X, Power of X, like all that shit, which is like
Yep.
the crazy shit,
Yep.
like total revamp of how mutants work in the universe.
Yep.
But it was awesome, and it still is because it's still ongoing. Like
Yeah.
it's been a long time. Like that storyline's been running for a while now.
Yeah, about 6 years, almost 6 years now, since 2016 is when they started up the House of X,
Yeah,
and it's been kicked off. Like it was just a very interesting thing because the X-Men stories got really weird with all the characters because they were really trying to push them to become secondary in the Marvel comic universe, but
they fucking
people,
killed Wolverine.
yeah, oh, God, the death of Wolverine was probably one of the dumbest things. He gets coated in adamantium as a statue, and that's how he dies. Really? Okay.
Now, like they could have done something interesting where everyone just thought he died, but it was like just like mentally torture for him because he came back immediately and kept dying because of suffocation over and over and over again.
Oh
Like that would
God.
like break you, right?
Yeah.
That would have been an actually interesting angle to go with. They don't do that. He gets resurrected and goes on a killing spree, burns the satellite, and comes back to Earth. Like
And he grabs an Infinity Stone.
the fuck?
Do you remember that? Because that was what, 3 or 4 years ago when he came back. Do you remember all the folks that had Infinity Stones? It was Wolverine, Gamora, and do you remember one of the other ones?
No.
He's a very, very, very B. He's like a D level character in the comic books. He's a thug in Daredevil. Yeah, I forget his name now, the actor's name, but he plays. Now I forgot the name now.
Uh,
He's the guy that holds all the. He's the guns dealer that that Daredevil always beats up. Come on now.
Oh, the guy
Now
that
you
T.J. Miller played.
Yes. No, no, no. In Daredevil,
Oh,
not Deadpool.
Daredevil. Turk.
Turk. Turk. Turk in the comic had one of the Infinity Stones. That's just like, I think at that point they were just like, yeah, we're just gonna do some crazy shit with this. And it turned out Gamora was like, she became a villain
Yeah.
after in that saga because she just went crazy and wanted to kill Thanos and all that stuff. But whatever. But hey man, mutants. I'm a big
Basically,
fan of this
mutants
thing.
is going to be weird in the MCU, is what we're trying to say.
Yeah, it's gonna be. Let's talk about that because they keep leaking out this story that Feige really wants to call the first film The Mutants, and I have a problem with that. I think it's too vague. Except my
It
wait.
sign reminds me of that. It was like a '90s show, like Mutant X or something like that.
Oh God, yeah.
Like it reminds me of that. I'm like, you don't want that. Like you want to hew to the comics, in the Incredible Hulk was the first Hulk one. Like you want a name
Okay.
like that, like Uncanny
Yep.
X-Men, or
Yep.
pick a moniker because they've had a few, but
Children of the
Uncanny's the
Atom
big
would have been
one.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So you said you had a thought on how to bring the mutants into the universe, and I want to hear this.
okay, so I might do this as a separate one-off piece, or maybe I'll just use this as a primer for my show, which is gonna be Wartburg's Impromptu Pitch, WIP, going on my YouTube channel. I'm thinking you essentially adapt the premise of a underrated but actually like introduce a lot of interesting concepts into the X-Men, and that is X-Men Evolution, or is it Evolutions? One of them.
Evolution.
Yeah.
Evolution.
Essentially, you take that core concept of some of the X-Men are the age you think of, like 30s and 40s, right? Like, like Charles Xavier's been out there doing his thing for however many decades, right? He's that, elder statesman professor kind of role. Wolverine's out there, his history's there because you need that part of the history to make the core of the X-Men work.
Yeah.
Maybe you have Storm, maybe you have one of the others be a little older, but honestly, the prime one that needs to be old is Wolverine. Charles Xavier as Xavier, Magneto is the one maybe even like reformed Magneto at this point. Who knows? And then your villain would then be like Emma Frost or something. And then, because they've never really served her well in any role in live action.
No.
Like, Magneto's been done. Like, you can't top Ian McKellen and Michael Fassbender. So don't do it, okay? Don't have him be the villain. Have him be an anti-hero, like where they set him up, which I actually think was interesting in the newer Fox movies with Fassbender. They really nailed where to fit the pocket of Magneto to me, of more anti-hero than villain, but can turn on a dime. You need to get somebody that can nail that. But maybe even have him be more overtly good still.
Okay.
So the break bad can happen with him. Maybe. But the core concept would be you're forming the X-Men as a young team. Right? Like you're going to have young Scott Summers. You're going to have Kamala Khan. Right? You're going to have, a different looking X-Men team than you're used to. And you're also going to have X-23. Because she's going to also be of the age, the actress who was in Logan and is really fucking good. Have her show up as X-23 when she's in her teens, which she is now. But when she's like closer to 18, 20-ish, have her show up as X-23. Like, because that was how they introduced X-23 as a comic, as a character in general, was that show.
Yep.
I mean, she was basically like kind of like Harley Quinn in the 90s with Batman the Animated Series, and like. Maybe you could have a rerun at Apocalypse even, because that was the big bad in season 2 was Apocalypse, which was actually fucking awesome. Like, I remember as a kid watching that going, fuck, this is cool. Right? Like, they actually did the Brotherhood of Mutants as a long-running antagonistic force. Yep. Yes. It was fantastic for that. And if you're going to do it, maybe you don't even do Miss Marvel season 2. Or maybe you do Young X-Men. Maybe her coming, like, the next step in her coming of age is... the Eternals happens, post-credits scene, Kamala Khan's going home, who's at her home, sitting with her parents, Charles Xavier and Eric Lyncher. Imagine that post-scene. And, for me, you don't overplay the 90s theme. Sprinkle in the Ottman, the X2 theme. That's fucking dope as hell. I was listening to it on the way home from work today.
But you gotta admit,
God,
the riff
what a
in this
theme.
Marvel,
Oh, it was a great riff. Great riff. And
really
it works
fast.
great as interstitials, because the Ottman team's like a longer thing, right?
Yep.
Like when they do Secret Wars and the Fox X-Men event, they will get Hugh Jackman to show up for fucking Secret Wars, okay?
Oh, yeah.
That's gonna happen. Then they come in on the X-Jet and everything, fucking just let that Ottman theme fucking sit, because it is iconic. Own it. Right, so that needs to happen at some point in Phase 5 or 6. That needs to make a triumphant return, because we're going to see the Fox X-Men in some capacity. I thought we were in Multiverse of Madness, but whatever. We were all disappointed. They didn't do a Deadpool. They didn't do a Deadpool.
Missed opportunity there.
There was a jail cell right there. What the fuck were you doing? How many jokes he could have cracked while everybody died around him? It'd been amazing. But that's beside the point. So yeah, then you're going to have like Kamala Khan essentially setting up as one of the leaders of this younger X-Men group. Okay. Because she'll have been one of the people that have been out there as a hero. She'll have worked with an Avenger or two, right? Like, she's been on the streets doing the hero thing, and then she's looked to as kind of a leader of this new generation, which would maybe rankle some traditional X-Men fans. But when you consider it's kind of, an amalgamation, it's a recondensed Marvel universe that never had the split with the Inhumans and the backroom politics and, the real world shit that happened in Marvel Comics. And it's a universe from scratch. I think you set up to where she's got to be in that core X-Men team. I think that just makes perfect sense. And because she's also a crossover you can have with, like, Fantastic Four, like Spider-Man usually is. Like, she's in that role, because by the time you get there, Peter Parker is going to kind of have aged out of it a little bit.
Yeah.
If you're doing younger X-Men. Like he'll have been college, post college. He'll maybe do some Fantastic Four stuff, but if you're going younger X-Men, I don't know. Maybe he's the leader of the Young Avengers, but I don't. I think if you keep X-Men kind of in its own pocket, Kamala Khan's got to be in there, especially because you name dropped mutants in the first season.
Yeah.
It'd be such a waste not to.
Well, it's possible that we're, when in Comic Con when they announced the phases, they talked about the phase 6 and the two Avengers films. There were a lot of spaces blank, like they were movies that they're probably going to announce at D23. I expect one of those to be Young Avengers in 2024. We have Kate Bishop. We're getting Cassie Lang next year, Stature. So at this point, there may be in 2024 also another season of WandaVision where the twins are older, and then that way the twins can play a role in New Avengers. Like I think if not in Phase 6, probably maybe even in Phase 7 in 2025, 3 years from now, where they do have a new. I think the Young Avengers is going to get a film in the next couple years, and it's going to be centered around Stature. Maybe Kamala Khan's part of that, maybe
Mm-hmm.
rather than being an X-Men, she decides she wants to be because she grew up loving the Avengers, and maybe the joke for her is like, wait, so now I've got to pick teams.
Oh yeah,
Either I be an X-Men
her
or an
conflict of
Avenger.
X-Men or Avengers is going to be a great
Yeah,
like you know like conflict for her internally.
yeah,
Because on one hand, Avengers, but also like she sees these people being ostracized, and like she is one of them. Like you
yep.
know, that's going to be a
So you,
fascinating
so
topic.
my thought is that if Feige really wants to introduce the mutants with a film called The Mutants, don't make it a film. Make it a TV show. Do like a Runaways where we tell a story of mutants in the world, right? We introduce mutants, and we could take some B-level or other kind of quasi-popular mutants and put their story in this mutants TV show. Do a 6 to 8 episode season, and then follow it up with the Uncanny X-Men. Like in the mutants, these guys, these characters are being chased by mutant villains or government officials or whatever you want it to be. Maybe government officials. It's possible we go that route. But at the end of it or near the end, they get introduced to a Charles Xavier, who gives them the option of, and maybe instead of the mutants, we call it the Runaways, and we just do. I know there was a Hulu show, but we do a formal MCU show called The Mutants or The Runaways, and it introduces mutant characters, and maybe that's how you can introduce Daphne King's X-23 into the MCU
Mm-hmm.
because she was like you said she was in X-Men Evolutions, which was really popular, and then a year later they put her in the Runaways comic book to introduce her in the comics because she was so popular for the 2 episodes she was on Evolution. Man, that was such a great cartoon, man.
It really
such a
was,
good
and
such a good follow-up.
I think you adapt that into some live action form, whether that be a movie or it's individual, like you said, kind of a running mini series,
Yeah,
because that helps you flesh out your villains, right? Because they're going to mostly probably be kid villains too, with some adult, antagonists. But you need to have that kind of long running mirror of like the good guys versus the bad guys, and what makes that kind of story work is it being a longer form than 2 hours.
yeah,
So I'm actually really looking forward to that if they can pull that off, because I think that's a more interesting way to build this as part of the universe, because you don't have to answer the question of what the fuck have these guys been for 40 years.
exactly.
You can leave the pocket of established mutants like way smaller than it was. Like Xavier, Magneto, Emma Frost, the Hellfire Club, the Brotherhood of Mutants, Wolverine, Weapon X can still happen, right? Because you're gonna have Deadpool too to work in. So like Weapon X still existed, but it was a much more constrained thing. Sabretooth, maybe Lady Deathstrike. You know,
Yeah.
you're not gonna get fucking like Alpha Flight fucking Canada superheroes rolling up,
or,
right? Like
or Excalibur
yeah,
or
like
anything like
we're
that.
not gonna get
Yeah,
that crazy, but you
yeah,
want to have those that pared down part of the history, but it was like the snap or WandaVision and the snap, right? Like something in that window changed the world and allowed that mutation that this small pocket of people that have known each other for 40 years, all of a sudden there's this new generation, and it's kind of an arms race to see who you can like who you can get on your side.
sure.
I think that's a fascinating way to bring mutants into the larger MCU and leave your like hand wave as much of the old lore as possible to start fresh. And I think that's the best place to start.
Well, I like this idea because it does open up questions because, like, I'm a big loyal X-Men guy. The comics. I grew up with it. I'm a big loyal, but I will say we have to change the story up a little bit because to have the Auschwitz backstory of Magneto complicates things now, given where we are in 2022, right? And to have him technically, even if he was a child, to be in his what late 70s at that point, then is that what we're talking about? If he was a kid, I don't
Yeah,
even remember
unless you're
his
gonna
age.
go Project Rebirth, he's been euthanized, like
Or I
youths
heard someone,
made youth, not
you know,
euthanized, wrong word. He's
yeah, de-aged.
de-aged. That's the word I'm
Yeah.
looking for.
Whoa, this guy's talking about taking him out like a cat.
Whoops.
Oops. We have Fantastic Four that's coming out next year, right? There is an opportunity there of using the negative zone as a means, but I don't want that to be a plot device
I got
where
my own thoughts on that. On
okay,
Fantastic
I
Four.
just, I just don't, I just, I well, and that's we could talk about Fantastic Four, but for me to say, like, I was talking with people online, and they're like, "Hey, I don't want them to get rid of his Jewish background and the Holocaust, all of that stuff. I don't want it to be removed from Magneto." I'm like, "Well, if you're going to have a young actor in the 2020s, you're gonna have to have a plot device to bring that up. Well, maybe he and Xavier get stuck in the negative zone for 20 years." I'm like, I don't really like that.
What about the 7 Days War? I mean, it wouldn't be the first time the first time like Israel was attacked.
Okay,
Like he
that's a
was a
good one.
kid in Israel or something. Like
Sure.
maybe he was their family was like visiting
Okay.
as they were on like a pilgrimage.
Yep.
As they're Jews. That could work. And like his
What was
parents were survivors of the Holocaust.
Okay, so that would make him closer to like 40s,
Yeah,
50-ish,
and that
you
would
know?
that would be kind of where I would want him to be, because especially if that casting rumor of Giancarlo Esposito was true,
Yeah, yeah,
he'd need to be a little older.
yeah.
Like he'd need to be pushing that age of extremely young, like World War II. But they'd be more like Korean War era with that age, because isn't he pushing mid 60s?
65,
Yeah,
65,
yeah. So that would be what, 1954, 55,
58, 58 is
58,
what he was
58.
saying.
Right? So you're essentially end of the Korean War,
Yeah,
like would be when he was born. So yeah, like in the 7 Days War, I think that was 67,
68 is when
68.
the 6-Day War was in
Yeah,
68, so
yeah,
he'd be
6 Day
about
War.
he'd be about 10 years
Yeah,
old, yeah.
that kind of tracks depending on how long you want to go, and it keeps the roots of his Jewish history, because that was the war where Egypt attacked them. I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it was Egypt. My history's it's been a bit. Would need to refresh myself on that before I speak out of turn, but something along those lines would make sense.
Yeah, it was Jordan, Syria, and Egypt,
Or
to
you
be
want to
fair.
get crazy, because generally, especially in the last 20 years, Israel's been the side of the asshole on the terms of the government side. They've been really
Okay.
heavy-handed, like to an extreme, like
Mhm.
killing journalists extreme. Do you make him Palestinian?
Ooh.
Man, I mean, because
I
that's like that like if you were Stan Lee making Magneto today,
Yeah.
would he be Palestinian? I mean, these are people that they've lived there for hundreds of years. All of a sudden, in the 50s, the UN's like, nah, you don't get to live here anymore. And then there's a fight for their existential existence as a people. It kind of fits.
Well, and you're right because if you look now, I think with the Iron Fist TV show, and people so upset that Danny Rand was, not an Asian actor because Danny Rand is not an Asian character in the comic, but the new Iron Fist is an Asian character. Have you noticed that? So
Oh yeah,
maybe and it's a lot of it. It's not, guys. It's not woke storytelling. What it is it's a
update
modern
like
understanding, the modern update of
like the
understanding that
war
hey,
that made Iron Man changes all the time.
exactly, exactly.
You know,
What was it? What was the first war? Was it
Vietnam. I
Vietnam?
think it
Right?
actually was Korea.
I think so.
He was that era, wasn't he? Wasn't he 60s?
Yeah, 60s, early 60s. Yeah, mid
Yeah.
60s.
So it
Yeah.
would have been like Korea Vietnam era, which were they happened very close together.
Yep. Yep. And then in the movie, it's of
Then it
course
was
in
Gulf War. Then
Afghanistan.
it was,
Gulf War.
various different iterations of the,
Yep.
like second, Gulf War. Like, and except for Captain America, they've all had kind of rotating and evolving,
Yep.
stories.
So yeah,
DC
it's
is a
it's
little more set
awesome.
in stone, but
Yeah, yeah. It's possible that they can I mean, they can revise it. I
Yeah,
think there would
like
be a
if you're gonna
big
make
backlash.
an entirely different, race Professor Xavier, go buck wild. Like
Yeah,
one of the best iterations of Superman was Hispanic. Justice League Gods and Monsters. Like
yeah.
I thought that was a great iteration of the character. Totally different version with the same powers.
Yep, and you know me, to me, as long as you tell a good story.
Yeah.
As long as
As
you
long
tell
as
a
they
good
can
story.
tell it in an engaging way that like hits the themes of X-Men,
Yeah,
I don't care what they look like.
yeah.
Whereas like Kamala Khan, like Chief like wasn't a mutant, but like yeah, she's her people are kind of an outsider. They're ostracized. Like you got police being very heavy-handed in how they treat the people of their religion. Like
Yep.
there's a lot there that lends it to being. Oh yeah, she would. And there's your allegory for her being a mutant. Like she's an outsider.
I mean, hell, she says it at the end, like, "Oh, great, just another the label, whatever," you know?
Exactly right.
It's like,
Like
"Okay, yeah." Hearing that reminded me just why I fell in love with the X-Men in the '90s because as a Hispanic boy growing up, I'm not saying I was persecuted, but I had saw racism, growing up on the other side of the tracks. I embraced this story of, hey, they're persecuted for what they are, because everyone else sees themselves as Homo sapien, as this one group of people, and then these are Homo superior is what Magneto dubbed them, but they're different, and so they were persecuted because they were different, and so I embraced the X-Men because of that storytelling through the '80s and '90s, and if Giancarlo Esposito becomes Professor X, you could tell it's a double story there for him. Not only is he a mutant that he's in hiding, but he's also a man of color that's experienced that, as a dark
do you
skinned,
make
as a
them
black.
both? Do you
Yeah.
really hammer home you know, MLK versus
I
Malcolm X?
I think that would really it would be you would have to like if Ryan Coogler is directing the movie, maybe we can get to something like that is a good story, but I think there would probably, and unfortunately I hate to say this, I think there would be a lot of criticism about it. Like they would have to really stick the landing for people to be accepting of it to be like two black characters, facing off with historically they were both quote unquote white
Another one that
characters
could
in the comics.
work if you're changing ethnicities. If you had Magneto be like a former child soldier or something from one of the South American countries.
Sure, like the Congo or something.
Yeah,
Yep,
like then
yeah,
the hardships of that travel up through Mexico and then becoming like he's a citizen, like
yeah,
and the struggles
yeah.
of that and that maybe that's how he met, Xavier, that civil rights fight and all that. I could buy that. And it would have more touchdowns to the American experience.
You know what, man? That actually would be really that would actually be kind of cool to have these if they were two Latin characters, and one of like let's say Magneto grew up in Colombia during the Pablo Escobar era,
Yeah.
and he had to deal with like the conflict of their family, like he
So,
was
yeah,
loved and
giving
respected by the people,
everything.
but his dad was like also working for him, who was a tyrant at the same time, and like
Hmm.
a cold-blooded killer, and like he had to grow up in that culture of like running and hiding everywhere because of the cartel. Like that would be a cool story, man. Like there's so many to go ethnically deep into these characters and make them vastly different. There's so many ways you can go, and it doesn't have to. They don't have to be both be Latin. Like I said, you know,
Yeah, you
he,
could.
he
There's a lot of
Lynch's
crossover
character,
in the 60s.
Meg, yep, and I just think that people are just so set on Eric Lyncher being, a Jewish character
It's
that
just that
was in the
he's one of the
Holocaust.
few that has such a specific ethnic identity
Yep,
and that is so ingrained in his character that to me it's the deepness of the integration, not the specifics of said like
yeah,
ethnicity that
sure,
matter. As long as it is earnest and it is all the way tied into his whole being as a character, I don't care how you make it.
okay,
Because that earnestness, like that's going to come through no matter what kind of story you tell, which is what
sure,
makes him such a great villain.
yeah.
So as or not even a villain because he's a great like even when he's a good guy, right? Like it's what makes him such a great character. So no matter what they change about him or Xavier, as long as it's not just like oh and he's this, it's going to be fine.
Well, hell, we have a black actor playing, Kang and Jonathan Majors, and
Yeah,
I thought he was brilliant in Loki, and, like, just to see him in interviews, like, of course, I don't know if you saw recently, the guy, he got super jacked for Ant-Man, like, he
well
is,
he
like,
was big
super
when they were shooting what was that HBO show?
um, 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 Lovecraft.
It's like Winchester County or something.
Oh, you're thinking Winchester County. I was thinking of the Lovecraft
Yeah,
show that
it's
he
a
was.
Lovecraft show, but it was like something
Oh,
county.
yeah, yeah. I don't remember the full
But
title.
he was pretty big in that show. Like he was
Yeah.
like a beefier guy compared to when he shows up in Loki. At least maybe that's how they shot him. He looked thinner.
Yeah.
Looked
He was
like he
wearing a
just lost weight.
beefheart. So.
Exactly. That makes you look thinner anyway. But he just looked like he, wasn't as
But he
bald.
got
Like,
he got super jacked for Ant-Man. So
yeah.
like this guy is going to be like he is like embracing the character of Kang, which is awesome.
And apparently behind the scenes, he blew them away.
Yeah.
Like, so it's
Yeah.
like, okay. He must have sold it so well that they're like, hey, we're going to underpin everything about our future plans on one audition. It must have been the best audition in the world. Like, I want to
But
see the story of that audition.
there's so much we can do here to go into other cultures and other stories of like war and conflict in the recent history that can drive mutant characters because at the core of all these mutant characters especially the global X-Men, like Sunfire and Storm and Peter Rasputin Colossus, and their stories are ingrained into conflicts within their home countries, right? Not only are they people that are mutants that are different because of their mutation, but then they also come from and Nightcrawler is one of them as well because of the way he looked and where he's from in Germany. Like there's so much we could do with that. Like there was so much we can tell with the storytelling, and I think people are going to forget. And I don't mean to be ugly about this, but there's obviously a large chunk of people out there that just they find any reason to make racist remarks about anything, just like they did with Miss Marvel, which unfortunately happened. But I think this is different because if you really followed the X-Men, you knew from the very beginning their story, and even Stan Lee talked about this. A lot of his first characters, they were these white characters, and he felt like there's much more storytelling outside of just the United States. There's a whole world out there, and so he started creating these other characters from different parts of the world and telling their backstories, based off of war and conflict. And so that really helped build the X-Men in the 90s to what they were, and I think that that is something they could really build on here and bring in a lot of people from all over the world to really jump in on Marvel's MCU because of what they could do with the mutants, the X-Men or mutants, whatever you want to, however you want to label it, within the MCU. There's so much storytelling they can do there, and it has me really thinking about what would be the best way to do that. With obviously Xavier and Magneto are going to be your anchors for this saga.
Yeah, especially because they're going to be the history points of like,
Yeah.
this is the world we lived in and why we
Yeah.
want to change it.
Yep.
Right? And if they're being antagonistic to each other, the competing vision for that future, which is
Yep.
what made the original Fox movies so like that first one so good,
Yeah.
right? Is because they nailed that tone. Like for all its faults as a movie, they absolutely fucking nailed that part of the
Sir Ian
X-Men.
was fucking brilliant in that movie,
Him and
man.
Patrick Stewart, I mean, could it
Yeah.
have been a better cast? Like we talk about RDJ and all these other ones, but I'm like, dude, that movie. I mean, they criminally wasted James Marsden, but Jesus Christ, what a perfect casting.
Yeah.
Like he was exactly what you think of Cyclops, and then they did nothing with the character. Not his fault. Famke Janssen, amazing as Jean Grey, great casting for it. Even their story, like I mean, Halle Berry, the accent that was direction, not her. That was a terrible idea.
Yeah, that was.
But her, like, she's actually really good, like as an actress. Like she's a good cast, but just a shitty direction.
Yeah.
Like their core X-Men team, not to mention Hugh Jackman, I think they did pretty good. Especially for like the first team up movie. It's pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
They got a lot to live up to on the Disney side, which is maybe part of the apprehension to get them in, is because
Yeah.
Fox, for its ups and downs, had some really high highs with those stories, and those are fairly fresh in people's minds because it's on Disney Plus. It's always there. Like people see it and watch it and remember it. It's how do you tell it new and different, and that's where I think the X-Men Evolution
Well,
play
before
comes
the
in.
MCU came along, folks would say their two biggest favorite comic book movies were Spider-Man 2 and X2. Remember,
They were
people would
dope.
say
That
that.
was what a great couple years those were when they came out.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
And then when we heard about Iron Man, we were all like, I'm excited, but like, is this really gonna work? And we're like, holy shit! Like
It
this,
mind blowing. I
like,
remember so vividly the Transformers DVD. I got that for my birthday, 2007.
Yep.
I think that was the when it came out. Maybe it was the
It
fall
came
one.
out in 06. It came out fall of 06.
I remember there being a summer one that I took my cousins from Germany to because they'd never seen a movie from the American perspective. Like they'd gone to theaters in Germany, but they didn't do like how we do movies. Like, there's more of a fanfare to movies over here.
You're right. It came out in June of '07. I thought it was
Yeah, I
'06.
thought it was because we did
Yeah,
4th of July in my
yeah.
local theater. But
And
so
then
it
a
would have
year
been that
later.
fall.
Yeah.
Fall 2007. It's on DVD. Maybe I bought it for myself. I don't know. There were 2 trailers on that. I sprinted downstairs because I was watching on a portable, shitty DVD player for in your car because I didn't have a TV in my room. Fucking broke as hell. I see the trailers. I watch them. I sprint downstairs, put them in the DVD player downstairs, grab my dad from outside, and make him watch the trailers. Number one, that Star Trek 2009 teaser, the
Yeah.
Spock intro with the where no man has gone before while they're building the Enterprise. Perfect. The perfect way to tease a trailer. You give me new Star Trek, building the Enterprise, Leonard Nimoy voiceover. What's not to love? Okay. Secondly, the Iron Man trailer was on that DVD.
Yes.
And it blew my goddamn mind. Even my dad was like, "Oh shit, they're doing fucking Iron Man? That's crazy." Because he was a nerd back when he was really small. Like when I would watch X-Men Evolutions, like he recognized Shield and Nick Fury and all these things when they show up at the end of season 2. He's like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
remember them from when I was a kid." Like, so he knew all this stuff about being a nerd, and he's the one that got me into all of it. And I was like, "It's gonna be awesome, and it's coming out on my birthday." Because it was May 2008 was in the trailer, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's happening!" Like, and I knew right away that movie was gonna fucking be amazing. Blew my mind.
Oh man.
What a time to be alive that was.
Yeah, that was like because Transformers, the first movie wasn't awful, wasn't great,
It was
but wasn't awful.
Who was the voice? It's not. Is it? It's something Wells.
For
Peter
Orson
Weller.
Welles. Peter Weller he's the TV version of Megatron. Yes.
Yeah.
Weller.
Who did Prime?
Peter
Optimus
Cullen.
Prime? Peter
Peter
Cullen.
Cullen.
He was so good in the first
Yeah.
Transformers. Like when he's like explaining who the Autobots are and the war on Cybertron and stuff, like with the swelling like music from Steve Jablonsky. Oh my god, what could have been with that franchise if they didn't completely shit the bed?
Yeah.
Because it was a damn good setup.
I love Peter Cullen, man. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. I've met him at a con years ago and talked with him. One of the nicest, very soft-spoken guy. He did the voice of Eeyore from Winnie the
Yeah,
Pooh for a
I
long
mean,
time too. But yeah, but just like he's the quintessential Optimus Prime. Like when they announced they were going to do live action, the entire internet was like, "It better be Peter fucking Cullen, or we're not watching this movie." And he did an interview about 10 years ago where he talked about that he saw that the internet was like forming petitions and stuff, and he was so emotional when he got the call from Michael Bay saying, "Look, we want you to we're doing Optimus Prime. We can't do it without you. We're even if the internet fought or not, like realistically, we have to have you voice Optimus Prime." And he thought he was done doing Optimus Prime, and he's like, "Okay." And I remember and you could go YouTube and watch the studio voice acting with he and Hugo Weaving, and like he's just standing there. He's like, "Wow, it's been forever since I've done this. I don't know how I'm gonna do it." And then he just starts off with, "Before time, there was the cube," and it's like, "Fuck, dude!" Like just your the hair stands up on your arms, man, because he's Optimus Prime. But I know we're going on a bunch of tangents here, man. But it's just
tangents are what we do. I wanted to do
that's what we
Comic-Con, but
do.
we've just done 45 fucking minutes on Miss Marvel
Okay.
and where they could take mutants. I don't even care. This was awesome.
But man, good stuff, man. Early, like going into the 2010s, like we were primed, like pun intended, to get some good stuff.
And
Finally,
it
man. Yeah.
pretty much all delivered.
Yeah, but none of this would have been possible if they hadn't done a very good Spider-Man. Raimi hadn't done a good Spider-Man 1 and 2, and X-Men 1 and 2 hadn't been good. Like we wouldn't have gotten this opportunity with Marvel. Marvel Studios wouldn't have wanted
Yeah,
to push forward because
like
they knew
Yeah,
they after that they knew they could do live action.
like Blade did it, but Blade was basically a supernatural movie.
And it's technically an indie film, Blade.
Yeah, like it was cheap. It didn't.
Yep.
It was critically successful, but it didn't make that much money. Even the
No.
second one that got the green light, and then eventually the third, like it didn't do. It had a really, it didn't have great legs. Whereas
Yep.
X-Men and Spider-Man, oh shit, we got something here. We got an audience that is willing to put butts in seats and spend a lot of money.
Yep.
Let's go to town, and let's not just
Now-
half-ass it, wink and nod. No, we go all in.
Yeah, and we have to remember, like going into Iron Man. Avi Arad was the head of Marvel Studios. He was the guy that was a directing editor of the comics for a long time, and then became head of their studio division. And so they were very skeptical going into this stuff, but they've realized, hey, if we do it right, live action can work. And hearing that Jon Favreau was going to direct it, I'm like, fucking Gutter from PCU? Like, really? Like, that's who we're getting? He's going to direct it? I'm like, okay, but we all knew it had to be RDJ. Like, it was like, okay, if we're going to do live action, it's got to be Robert Downey Jr. There's no one else, right? Of course, he gets cast. But when that first trailer dropped, man, and I was in a movie theater when I saw that. I can't remember what movie it was when that first trailer dropped. And I was like, holy shit, it's going to work. Like, it's going to work. Like, just, we're going to
Yeah,
do
like that
this.
shot of him walking away from the exploding tank.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, man.
And then Iron Man, dun, dun, dun. Yeah, this is like,
And it was
God.
the great Ramin Djawadi theme, like, which I can't
Yeah.
believe they've killed. You can't find it anywhere.
Yep.
Bullshit. It's on YouTube, but still, like, what an awesome, just kick-ass metal as fuck comic book movie.
Yeah, it was. God, man. Oh, so this with
Back to Marvel and the Mutants.
yeah. So, but this bit of nostalgia, it just helps me realize that, hey, we're in a really good pace with the MCU content, and I know people out there are getting a little worn down, but a huge comic book nerd like me, I love it. Like, if something's bad, I'm gonna say it. Like, for me, Love and Thunder was meh. It wasn't great, wasn't bad.
Should have been 3 hours.
Yep. Multiverse of Madness was better than I thought it was going to be. So Miss Marvel really has me thinking, okay. And then the trailer from Comic Con, She-Hulk. Now I'm excited, man. I don't know about you, but I'm excited for She-Hulk next month.
I always kind of was, because I'm like, number one, I'm not the target demographic for She-Hulk, never was. But she's an interesting character that's in a unique spot in the universe where she is essentially an Avengers level character on Daredevil's level. Like, that is a unique character, right? Like, it's kind of like having the Flash in the Arrowverse, where it's like, no, the Flash is a fucking Justice Leaguer, dude. Like, straight up, one of the most powerful beings on the planet, pounding around with green fucking arrow, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what makes Barry Allen work as a character. And She-Hulk's kind of similar, where it walks in both worlds, plus the actual, like, just general Gen version, like the human version of her character. She's got like 3 different layers to her story.
Yep.
Not to mention the subtler stuff about, like, being a woman superhero and, that subtext. Or more, not even subtext, like overt, part of her character. But, like, on the base, take the gender out of it, there's 3 layers to the character. And that's fucking unique in comic books.
Yeah.
Usually it's 1 and 2, not 3. So that is a very fun place to be taking a character. Not to mention doing it as a comedy. Awesome. Doing it with Hulk as a way to get around Universal being fuckwads. Yes, I'm in. And like pushing that part of the universe forward. Do we get Hulk and Agents of Smash? That'd be amazing.
Well, you could get that as a series and have Ruffalo do it, because it's an ensemble production, so it circumvents Universal. Yeah.
Yeah, like if they do a follow-up post Thunderbolts, would not shock me if we get Agents of Smash.
I mean, if they're doing Thunderbolts, we're getting Red Hulk,
right? Yeah, we get Red Hulk, She-Hulk, and Hulk are on the table.
Yeah.
Like, and I have a theory about She-Hulk that I'll get into. So we'll wrap up with She-Hulk. We'll talk trailer, some Daredevil stuff, and where we think they're going to go with She-Hulk, as it is the next property on the books.
Yeah.
So for me, the second trailer is significantly better.
Yeah.
Actually looks like a fun series I want to watch, even if it's not maybe something that's like going to light the world on fire with its quality, right? Like we're all not shitting a brick like Daredevil season 1, right? Like it's not trying to be that though. So it's a kind of a slice of life, finding yourself kind of story.
Yeah.
Which, much like Miss Marvel, if you nail that, I don't care that it's not end of the world stakes, and I don't care that it's not, going to go for Emmys, right? Like I just want a good story. Looks like they're going to do that with a character I didn't really think I was going to like vibe with, even though it's an interesting character. Like I don't mind vibe with Namor, but it's an interesting character, right? Yeah. Like, I think he's in a great spot with Black Panther being the villain. So,
sure.
Like, that's a great role for him, especially as an introduction. But I'm excited. Of course, the teaser with Daredevil, but I think that's got to be the end game, right? Like, that can't be. If that's mid-season, what the fuck? Like, we got to have Charlie Cox in a courtroom then, if he's going to show up before. But I can't imagine he is. Because that, to me, feels like that would have been a late edition. Like, because that wouldn't be that hard to fit in. Because you just need a
No.
guy in a suit doing a flip on a wire on a rooftop. Like, that's something you could fit in late once you made the decision to pull the trigger on Daredevil Born Again and have Charlie Cox in the suit for a one shot of, like, hey, we need to talk, and to maybe take off the helmet or something. Because then you could have early Charlie Cox in the suit, like, or in a courtroom where he knows just Jen clearly, like they know each other as
Yeah.
like people that defend and help superpowered people, and then he shows up at the end as Daredevil. My theory is that maybe it's going to involve Bruce like breaking somehow, because you need to get the Hulk in a different spot than he is right now.
Yeah.
This is not an interesting place for the Hulk to be. Professor Hulk sucks. Sucked in the comics, sucks here. You need to, and because they did break him in the timeline. Like, in the future with Shang-Chi, he's Bruce Banner.
Yep.
With the arm.
Yep.
Unless they're going to say that was a complete retcon error, are bad, which they have not. Something's got to give here with Hulk breaking from Banner. And it would let her be like, oh, like, I need to be not just street level superhero. I need to go take on the Hulk and win to save New York. Like, that could be a stake that they're just not showing anyone to keep there in the back pocket for their finale. I think that'd be a pretty great finale. Especially with the start is she's going to be being trained by Hulk. The end, she has to beat Hulk. I can see it. I don't think they're going to do it because that's expensive as fuck. But it'd be something they could do.
Well, it's obviously a comedy written by a couple of ladies that
people behind it. Stellar resume.
I mean, one of the producers, she wrote the uber popular Pickle Rick episode of Rick and Morty. Like, that's not just what she's done, but for me, like the first thing I see is like, oh shit, she wrote that one, which is such a great episode, by the way. But Phoebe Waller-Bridge did consult on this because the two EVPs of this, the two heads of this show, they wanted to style this after Fleabag. Now, I've only watched a few episodes of Fleabag. It's a black comedy, like a very dark comedy, but that's kind of what they want to do. But so I'm wondering, like, if there is, like you said, there has to be a bit of a dark turn at some point. Then, if that's the case, if they want to style it after Fleabag, like obviously she's gonna be breaking the fourth wall, and it's gonna be a lot more casual very early on. But at some point, there has to be a break. Maybe it is Bruce, or maybe we get the introduction of the Red Hulk here.
Plus, Abomination's on the table.
The Abomination is still there. So
and
there's
Wong.
all that there.
We get Wong.
I like how Wong's become the
MC Wong.
Yeah, he's just like everywhere now, and that's great. I love it.
He's Magic Coulson. Better not kill him.
Yeah, they not especially not on this show. Come on now.
You kill Wong.
He's a sorcerer. He's a sorcerer supreme.
I mean, people took it when it was Clark Gregg. They're not going to take it when it's Benedict Wong. Okay, and there better be a multiversal meetup between Coulson and Wong. That must fucking happen. Okay.
I think we get Coulson making a cameo in Marvels. I think we get Coulson in Marvels.
That would be great, and or because he was in Captain Marvel. But I want Secret Wars. I want Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Coulson, not as an LMD, like season 2 era Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Quake, yeah.
With Quake and the whole 9 yards.
Hell, they may even have Ghost Rider with them.
Dude, imagine if it's season 4.
Yeah.
Like
Secret Wars has it's going to be a massive project.
And they're doing it without the Russos. Are you kidding me? The two guys who are like, this is our dream project. We also don't want to do it. Like, but on the flip side, I kind of see it because like in your head it will always be perfect, but once you do it, you've done it. Like I don't know. I could see them not wanting to do it. Maybe they were approached and they said no.
Maybe
they got to go. They got to get that Netflix money.
Yep, exactly. I'm happier with this this trailer. The CGI looks better, improved. I'm not expecting it to be a world beater show because at this point, like you said, Daredevil is going to be the bridge from this show to Echo. He's going to play a big part in Echo, and then he's going to have his show in 2024. We could talk about that if you want. Like,
Born Again is a conspicuous title because number 1, season 3 on the Netflix was based on the Born Again comic run and nailed its adaptation beautifully for the universe they had to work with. I thought it worked so well with their Karen Page. Like, damn, that was good. Right?
Yeah.
Like the finale with the like the face off with him and oh,
Kingpin.
Bullseye and
Oh,
Kingpin,
Bullseye.
that three-way fight at the end, like just fucking comic book goodness at its best. Like great choreography, which was its hallmark. But now you want to call it Born Again, and
Yeah.
it's 18 fucking episodes. Oh, we're
18,
getting mini arcs. We're getting 3 to 4 episode mini arcs with this shit.
18
And it's going to be Daredevil
episodes.
bouncing around all the different Netflix properties, teaming up with all of them, culminating in a big finale where they all meet up and kick someone's ass. It's going to be dope as fuck.
18. That's like 3 seasons of all of the other shows at this point.
Yeah,
All the other
it's going to be
all the other
amazing.
MCU
I'm
shows.
going to get 4 episode arcs and a 2-part finale.
Okay. Two-part
Like,
finale for sure. Yeah.
like, are you kidding me? This show's because number one, they're doing it, which means whatever has been pitched as a show must have been a great pitch
Yeah.
because you're following up one of the greatest comic book adaptations ever. Sure, it was on a competitor, but it was your IP, and it's on your property now. It's on Disney Plus. You got to follow that up, and you're calling it Born Again. Damn, this is gonna be good.
18 episodes, man.
18
We
episodes of Charlie Cox in the suit. Yes.
we both know Jessica Jones is going to be on it because Feige loves Kristen Ritter
She's
as
awesome.
Jessica Jones. You know, he loves her. So she's going to be back. The questions you have now are they bringing back the other cast? Is our Foggy, I forget
If
the
you don't
actress who
bring
plays
back
Loki.
Foggy Nelson, you have committed a sin against comic books.
Yeah.
Okay? I can't remember his name, but he was from Fulton Reed and the Mighty Ducks, and he's
Mighty
awesome.
Ducks.
You better bring him back. Like, oh, it's Deborah. What's her last name? Wolf?
I think it's Wolf. Yeah, Deborah
Yeah.
Wolf. I think
Deborah
so.
Ann
Yeah.
Wolf, maybe? She a 3-name
Yep.
person?
Deborah Ann Wolf. Good call, man. Yep, she is.
Fucking nailed it.
She
That,
has said she is ready to be Karen Page again whenever Marvel calls.
and you know their Kingpin's in. Like, if you're going to
Oh.
bring in Kingpin and Charlie Cox, you have to bring in the entire core Daredevil cast. That is absolute must. Fans are going to hate it if you don't.
Yeah. Well,
And why
D'Onofrio
even
has said he is back. So,
Yeah, and why even bother if you're only giving half the cast?
Yeah.
And if you're doing all of Daredevil's cast, you might as well do all the greatness that was Jessica Jones. And I think the cast of Luke Cage, and honestly, I think Coulter was misserved because they completely lost focus and vision for where season 1 was going to go.
Yeah.
But he was really good as the reluctant hero. Like, he was really good as that in the first part of season 1, plus Jessica Jones season 1. Bring him back too. Colleen Wing, her actress, she was dope. Bring her back. Plus, you can have a sword wielding fucking Iron Fist. Yes.
All
That'd
right.
be awesome.
So I'm hearing this rumbling that at D23, because obviously in Phase 6 there was a lot of gaps they have to fill. That they're waiting to make some announcements, and maybe they make this to really kick up momentum for Born Again. There's going to be an arc where John Barathal's Frank
Punisher.
Castle because that was another character and actor that Feige really liked from the Netflix stuff. He was a really big fan of Kristen Ritter. I never read anything much about Michael Coulter as Luke Cage. I thought he was great, but I mean, never heard
Oh yeah,
much
not
about
from Feige, but like just
yeah.
as a
The
fan,
other
and I
one,
really like their chemistry.
yeah, but he absolutely loved Barathol as Frank Castle. So, I mean, it makes sense, man. I mean, and Barathol has also said he's one of those that's like, hey, I will jump back on if my schedule allows it, and they call me, I'm all over. I want to be like he said this in an interview like a year or two ago. He felt like his story was left on the table. There's a lot more Frank Castle left on the table. So, I mean, there's so much we could do here with 18 episodes, man. God.
Yeah,
Ugh.
it's gonna be great.
But it does ask you asked the question, and you're right. Born Again was the story they did in season 3, where they're calling this new soft reboot Born Again. Where do we go? Is it just because we're kickstarting it, or are they trying to tell us that the Born Again storyline is going to carry on a bit longer? Which I thought they wrapped up nicely in season 3 on Netflix.
I think it's a metaphoric title, like Born Again, as in we're bringing it all back.
Yeah.
You know,
And you guys know Daredevil.
it's kind of
Born
a
Again,
meta
so,
title.
yeah, meta title. Yeah.
So like I'm expecting big things, and I think they know they're setting themselves up for that.
Okay.
Like you can't call it that and not know fans are gonna freak the fuck out. You know, like
Yeah.
You could have called it Reborn. You could have called it Man Without Fear. You could have called it.
Man with a
You could
fear.
have called it anything, but you called it Born Again. So
Yeah.
I, I hope you
There's
know
a
what
reason.
you're setting
There's a
yourself up
reason.
for a lot. If they don't know why they're setting themselves up for it, they're only setting themselves up to fail. But I
Okay.
don't think they don't know. They gotta know.
Now I gotta go watch season 3 of Daredevil, dude. Gotta
It's
love
such a slow, like with a purpose. Like
Yeah.
it is heavy, so that when you get to that cathartic, I beat you. It's just fucking.
Emotional release, man.
It's just. That's the only word you can describe my feeling of watching him beat Kingpin to a bloody pulp and then stopping to let him live. Like, holy fuck, what a great hero moment. So good. If they think they're gonna, I mean, they gotta do something to live up to that. And Cox has proven he can do it. So
Yeah.
I'm very, very excited for this one because it's one of the few shows that has had like a known quantities already. Like there were movie versions of Hawkeye, and but we didn't really see much of him or Wanda, right? Like Loki, we'd gotten plenty of, and we knew Tom Hiddleston was awesome. Miss Marvel, we knew nothing of, right? Like She-Hulk, we know nothing of as the mainstream audience,
Yeah.
you know. So like, I mean, Daredevil's got like known shit. Like we know we know their Kingpin, we know their universe. Like there's a lot of knowns to compare against, and I'm excited to see if they can live up to it. Because man, that cast absolutely deserves a shot to try.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great.
Just to see D'Onofrio and Cox like on the screen together again
It's gonna be
as
amazing.
Kingpin and Daredevil is gonna be awesome.
Are they gonna retool Kingpin to fit better?
Well,
Because
they
he
did
was very different in.
in Hawkeye. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, they're gonna retool him to like, hey, after getting beat by the new Hawkeye, like he tightens up his persona and he becomes the more Kingpin that we know from the Netflix series.
Yeah.
Because he's also a Spider-Man villain, so like.
Well, and we're talking about this, but we're forgetting next summer they're both going to be in Echo. They're going
Yeah,
to play major parts of Echo. So maybe this story is going to we're going to bridge the gap from the Netflix show to Hawkeye. We're
maybe
going to
it's
bridge that gap.
Echo turning against him and like really hardens him into the Kingpin we meet fighting Daredevil.
Yeah,
That'd be pretty dope.
man. Can't wait for this stuff,
What
man.
I honestly kind of feel bad for the actress that plays Echo because I mean she's so overshadowed by Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio. Like even in her own show, she's the lead of a Disney Plus flagship MCU show,
Yeah.
and it's all about two other people that are just side characters.
We say that now, but they could do some
Oh, for sure, for sure.
amazing writing that can have us say,
Yeah,
okay,
it's just
I
like
like this character.
I think like changing up the the character a little bit, having it be an actual disabled actress playing the
Yep.
role, excellent. Like the beats that they've laid for where they could go with Echo are really really good. I was just a little underwhelmed with her appearance in Hawkeye, and I think that
Me
was
too.
more just because of the focus of Hawkeye the show.
Yeah.
Again, it was one of those shows where you give me one more episode to focus on Echo, and I'm liking her a lot more.
Yeah.
Same with Sharon in the Falcon and Winter Soldier. Give me an episode to focus on Sharon in the blip, and I'm liking her as a villain a whole lot more.
Yeah, that could have been. You could have done an episode right before the finale of
Yeah,
just
like a
Sharon
whole
Carter.
maybe like a black and white flashback episode of her and the Carly the villain, and that's their relationship. Its rise, its fall, its breaking point. Boom, back into the finale.
Exactly.
And I think if they give themselves that extra leeway, their villains will hit harder in their shows.
And that could have been part of the virus storyline. We don't know.
Exactly. And
We don't
honestly,
know.
same with Miss Marvel. To wrap it back into Miss Marvel where we started as we wrap up towards our close. We needed an episode that better explained the relationship with the clandestines, where
Yeah.
they came from. Like,
Yep.
dive into their world, how they came to our world, what went wrong in their scientific adventure or whatever that got them here. Like, explain that so that her turn to like become the friend again and like save, her granddaughter, great granddaughter, and save the world at the expense of her own, the villain. Her turn to like save the world to save her son. That would have hit way better.
Yeah.
Than just in 30 seconds she saw like backwards into time, flipped her mind, and wants to save her son. Dope, she killed herself. Like,
Yeah.
that was very quick. She went from trying to kill Kamala to killing herself.
Mhm.
Didn't really hit very well. One of the few missteps of the entire show. 1 to 2 episodes better exploring that. And maybe Kamala even like seeing it and like seeing the other worlds as she understands where she comes from. I'd have been down for. But well, maybe it would have taken too much away from the main cast. I don't know. It just felt like the show went coming of age New York story. Oh, hey, now we're going to Pakistan, and now we're back. Like very, well, whiplashy.
Yeah.
But I think that's where we're going to have to wrap it up. We're at about 1:10, which is roughly our general recording time. So if you're watching this for the first time, we stream these live over at twitch.tv/MrWartburg. If you're on YouTube, the link is in the description. You can follow our individual Twitter handles there on the screen. I'm at MrWartburg. Fusion is at It's Mr. Fusion. We're both MR Misters, not spelled out. We try to do these every other week. Episode 48. I don't know what we're going to do for 48. If we want to do a one-off episode strictly about our favorite Comic-Con trailers. Or maybe we want to do a DC slate one, because we haven't done DC in a bit.
Yeah, we've been giving a lot of Marvel love. Time to give DC some love. Yeah.
I'm thinking we do a DC one. Episode 49 will be around the time of the She-Hulk premiere. So we'll dive into the first episode or two, whenever they release for that show. And then episode 50 will be our 2-year anniversary when I'm in Austin, Texas over the Labor Day weekend. And we're going to do a little whiteboard MCU ranking with some friends.
Yeah.
Grill some burgers and or some other meats of choice. Hang out, have a barbecue platter, and rank some movies. I'm all about it. It's going to be a great time. Fusion, any closing thoughts?
No, man. Other than Comic-Con was actually exciting this year. A lot of good content coming out, not just from the Marvel side, but all across the board. And looking forward to. We could talk about this another day, but hey, we're getting close to the dog days of sports summer being over here, man. So you and I are going to have a lot of sports content to take in, as well as
people. You don't have no idea if you've ever watched our show. Every Hawkeye win, I'm bringing my Hawkeye jacket out. My loud as fuck yellow Iowa Hawkeye jacket. I wear it all the time.
I call it the David S. Hawkeye jacket, not the David S. Pumpkins, the David S. Hawkeye.
Heck yeah, and it's awesome.
It's awesome.
It was $15 at Target, so. But and I'm very excited to make a lot of wings and watch a lot of football.
Yeah, so we're getting there, man. We're getting there. The summer, the very hot summer's almost over, and we're gonna have a lot of good fall content, both geek content and sports content.
And I'm getting a PS5.
Yeah, he's getting a PS5.
Might be here Sunday. Maybe it depends on if FedEx wants to deliver. Mine sometimes does do things on Sunday. It's weird, but at the latest, I'll have it Monday, streaming on Tuesday.
Nice.
Very excited. Speaking of streaming, we're going to play some Apex over at twitch.tv/MrWartburg. So if you're watching this on YouTube, we're going to end the show here. But you should give us a follow, like, subscribe, leave a review, share the podcast, because we like to grow these things. And be on the lookout for my individual episodes called Wartburg's Impromptu Pitch. I'm going to work on the script tomorrow in between some landscaping work with my dad, because we're renovating our house this fall. Just going to get real crazy. Hoping most of it will be done by the time I'm back from Austin. And then we're going to barrel on into August and do our DC show and do our other stuff that we've talked about. And we hope to see you there. Thanks for hanging. See you.
Take care.